Good morning, class. How's everyone?
Great, how are you?
Good, how are
Pretty
you?
good. Isn't it amazing that I'm here with all of you? You know, if it wasn't for these two men, I probably wouldn't be here. Because of them and their efforts in grouping, I'm here today and able to be in this class with every single one of you. Imagine the year is 1960. You're standing in the middle of a protest. The protest, civil rights movement, to get equal rights for African Americans. What is confusing? There's two sides. One's calm and collected, the other's aggressive and rowdy. You're confused and not sure what side to take. You don't know what to do. The two people for this reason, Martin Luther King Jr. and Malcolm X. These two men are the most influential for the civil rights movement. Many people know the civil rights movement was about what it was about, but does everyone know the background of both these men? Does everyone know what influenced these men to take completely different approaches while trying to achieve the same goal? Why were they so influential to African Americans? Since I was young, my parents made it an effort for me to learn about these men, but for the last few weeks, I've gotten to get a little deeper into what really made these men the men that we know today. For my speech, I will talk about Martin Luther King's childhood, Malcolm X's childhood, and the similarities and differences each man had in their approach to integrating racism in the United States. For my first, the life of Martin Luther King was a great influence on his peaceful approach to integrating all races in the United States. According to my class analyzing, 100% of you know who Martin Luther King is and the basics of his influence in life. Martin Luther King's early life, according to A.L. Herman's 1999 book, Community, Violence, and Peace, Martin Luther King was born January 15, 1929, to Martin Luther King Sr. and Alberta Williams King. Martin Luther King was originally named Michael King Jr. and was the middle child, having an older sister and a younger brother. Growing up, King was influenced by his church heavily on both sides of his family. His grandfather was a pastor at Ebenezer Baptist Church in Atlanta. After his grandfather's death, his dad took over as pastor. His father later adopted the name Martin Luther after German Protestant, the famous Martin Luther, giving his son the same name. Martin followed his father and grandfather's footsteps and began to co-pastor alongside his dad. Martin was a great student, attending segregated schools before graduating at the age of 15. He attended Morehouse College in Atlanta. This is an historically black college, men's black college, for his bachelor's degree before attending Boston University for his master's and doctorate in theological studies by 1955. As stated by the biography of Martin Luther King Jr. from the King Center at the University of Kentucky, while attending a Kaiser Theology Seminar in Pennsylvania, he was elected to an mostly all-white class as president. After finishing his studies, he started his family immediately and was elected pastor of Dexter Avenue Baptist Church in Montgomery, Alabama. In 1955, King had accepted leading positions of leading organizations of its kind, nonviolent demonstrations of contemporary times for African Americans. By the time Montgomery bus boycott had started, King was the leader of the boycott. Because he was a leader, he was arrested, his home was bombed, and he was abused, but continued to take on the role. Next, I'll talk about Malcolm X's life and what influenced him on the approach of integrating African Americans in not a good way. About 69% of you know who Malcolm X was, while 31% of you did not know. Malcolm X, before his fame, according to Harold Bloom, 1996, Alex Haley, and Malcolm X's autobiography of Malcolm X. Malcolm X was born Malcolm Little, May 19, 1925. He was born to Earl and Louise Little in Omaha, Nebraska. Malcolm's father was an avid unspoken member of the Universal Negro Improvement Association, which caused a lot of unwanted attention from white supremacist members, later resulting in his death. His death left his mother to raise 7 kids. With all that, his mother had a mental breakdown in 1931, resulting in her kids being sent to foster care. This was Malcolm's first direct encounter with white people, where he spent only a short time before being sent to a juvenile detention center. Malcolm was a good student and well-liked by his classmates. He was nominated president, but soon dropped out because his favorite teacher told him that he wouldn't amount to anything in life. After dropping out, Malcolm moved to Boston with his sister, where he fell into the life of crime and drugs. He was later arrested for burglary in 1946 and sentenced to 10 years. While in prison, Malcolm did a whole 360 and changed his life completely with the encouragement of his siblings and members of the Nation of Islam. Malcolm was so dedicated to the Nation of Islam that he would often write the leader Elijah Muhammad in hopes of working under him once he got out of jail. It worked, and when he got out, Malcolm changed his name from Little to X, as said by Harold Bloom in his Alex Haley and Malcolm X autobiography of Malcolm. Lastly, I will tell you how Martin Luther King and Malcolm X wanted African Americans and minorities to be considered equal to their majority. The only thing that was different was their ideas and approaches in reaching that goal. In August H. Nim's 2016 Violence or Nonviolence in the Success of Civil Rights Movement, Malcolm X, Martin Luther King Jr. Nexus, he discusses both men's approach and how he believed that Martin Luther King is celebrated nationally in America because of his approach, while Malcolm X isn't, due to his unlikely idea of getting African Americans equal rights. As shown in my survey, all of you knew more about Malcolm X Jr. than you did about, or all of you knew more about Martin Luther King Jr. than you did about Malcolm X. So it means, like stated by NIMS, American people praise King's peaceful approach, so in order to celebrate that, he was given holiday and to consistently remind us of efforts King made to integrate all people. Malcolm, however, took the opposite approach. Malcolm believed that after many years of bad encounters with the white people, that there were no way for minorities to get where they wanted unless they used force. Both men had huge platforms and used that to their advantage. King's peaceful approach gave him the larger platforms, so large that he was meeting with U.S. presidents in order to pass laws that gave every citizen the same rights. Those presidents were Dwight Eisenhower, JFK, and Lyndon B. Johnson, as stated by the National Public Radio, Inc. in their January 2008 article. King's consistency in meeting and followings influenced the United States government to pass acts like the Civil Rights Act of 1964, which outlawed discrimination in the workplace regardless of race, color, religion, sex, or national origin. The Civil Rights Act of 1968, also known as the Fair Housing Act, allowed equal housing opportunities regardless of race, religion, or national origin. Malcolm X also had a large following. His followers, like him, believed that Martin Luther King's approach was just to give the majority long enough for them to give little by little. X would preach against King and encourage his people to make their own, as in making your own schools, making your own hospitals, and coexisting along with the white people. X had the idea that he wanted African Americans to be violent and fight for their rights to get back at Caucasians for many years of slavery that they had put their ancestors through. Malcolm believed that blacks and whites should coexist with one another, but shouldn't be together as one like King was preaching. Due to both men's dedication, their lives led them to an untimely death. Both King and Malcolm X were assassinated at the young age of 39. When their lives were taken from them because of their preachings and what they believed was right for America. In conclusion, Martin Luther King and Malcolm X both lived young lives that led to becoming important members of the of the American history with different approaches in bringing Americans to equal levels. King lived a simple church life while X struggled to get what was considered back on the right track. Even with different lives, but before raising to celebrity status, both men knew what their goal was in life, and that was to give equal rights to everyone in the United States. Although they were so different, they lived similar lives while fighting for the same thing, which led to me being here today. Thanks to them, I, like many other people, are able to exist comfortably amongst other races, ethnicities, and cultures. We are all able to come together as one, and thanks to them, everyone has different color race friends, different color race family, and that is it.